From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. And ahead today, K-State's Jaymelynn Farney and Doug Shoup will talk about concerns that have been raised about planting cover crops for fall and winter beef cattle forage, specifically whether those grazing plans could be curtailed by previously applied herbicide applications on that ground. Also today, K-State's Art Barnaby announces that K-State's final estimations on the ARC payments for 2016 wheat, corn, soybeans, and grain sorghum have now been posted for you producers to review. Later, Sarah Moyer previews with K-State's Dale Blasi the 2017 Beef Stalker Field Day a week from tomorrow. And with his weekly commentary on rural Kansas, K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven. All this ahead on Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
We've been talking about this some as we entered the fall season. The heightened interest in planting cover crops in the fall as a source of livestock forage. Well, of late there's been something of a red flag raised about that in regard to the herbicide history on acreage to be planted to a cover crop and any complications that might create. We're talking now with two K-State Research and Extension specialists based in southeast Kansas. Jaymelynn Farney is a beef systems specialist there, and Doug Shoup is a crops and soil specialist. They've been on the receiving end of questions from producers about this issue. Before we get into the particulars of that, though, Jaymelynn, there has been quite a bit of interest this fall in planting cover crops for forage, has there not?
Yes, sir, there sure has been. You know, the forage crops in general have always been considered a very valuable source for cattle over the winter, you know, especially wheat pasture. I mean, there's a lot of guys that make a living off of grazing wheat pasture cattle. Mm-hmm. Well, with the integration of cover crops into cropping systems, trying to be able to improve the productivity and sustainability over time of your available natural resource, more and more producers are really looking at ways to plant a forage crop as a cover crop, but also be able to get some direct economic value out of it. That's one thing that we consistently can find is that putting cattle in the system helps you recoup some of the immediate cost of the cover crop establishment. There's still a lot of research out there that's showing variable responses and how long it takes to determine some economic benefit to your cover crops, but putting cattle in the system, you do capture some money rather quickly.
And Jaymelynn, you've been interacting with beef producers about the options available here. Winter wheat, of course, producers, particularly in southern Kansas, as you note, familiar with using that crop as a forage resource. But what other types of crops are seemingly catching the most attention right now amongst producers?
For the fall forages, you know, most of them have a grass base. Many of your cereal grains, barley, oats, wheat, triticale, rye. I know rye is, you know, if you have some wheat neighbors, you'd be very cautious about that. But from a cattle perspective, that's a very good quality forage. We also, many people like to incorporate some brassicas into these grass mixtures. They're very hardy plant. Doesn't take a whole lot for them to grow like crazy, even so much so that sometimes if you're wanting a high establishment of grasses, I recommend only putting out about a pound of a brassica in with your grass mixture per acre. People are still looking to try and put in some legumes for some nitrogen fixation. Most of our research has been not very favorable for a fall legume in these cocktail mixtures, but some guys that I hear of that are planting some, they'll go ahead and put in a cowpea, even though it's a summer annual. If they can get in early enough, they'll try and use a cowpea or an Austrian winter pea as a winter legume.
to the nature of the issue that has arisen recently, and that has, again, to do with how that land was managed previous to potentially being planted to a cover crop this fall. Obviously, this will be crop ground in most instances, and there may have been herbicide applications likely prior to this time on that acreage, and what that might suggest about grazing restrictions. Doug, what are you hearing about this?
Well, I think that there's a few points that we have to remember, and regardless of whether or not you put a crop following that, there are still grazing and haying restrictions on many of our herbicides. So even if you were to plant something or not, you still have to be cautious about being mindful of what the label says for turning cattle or other livestock out on even, say, corn stubble or sorghum stubble. There are grazing restrictions with almost every herbicide that we use. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is that we can plant cover crops, and that's many times okay, and it's up to the risk of the producer whether or not they actually want to take on that risk of herbicide carryover that could damage their particular cover crop. But once we turn livestock out onto it, it no longer is a cover crop, it is now a forage crop. And that is where kind of the issue is pretty dicey, because maybe not all of the proper residue tests have been conducted on a particular herbicide to get registered. And so either they have done the test and they see that possibly there is some accumulation into the animal from some herbicide residues, or they just haven't taken the time or the expense to do the proper testing to get that registration and that particular footnote, if you will, put on a specific label. So most of the times there's grazing restrictions on many of these herbicides, but it's whether or not the issue is, are we going to go ahead and graze these cover crops?
Which we want to talk about, but the restrictions, they vary by herbicide compound?
That's it. I took the liberty of pulling up a few of the somewhat common herbicides. I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking up soybean because we don't usually get a lot of grazing after a soybean crop. Mm-hmm. I focused a lot on sorghum and a lot on corn, a little bit on wheat, but there's a lot of popular herbicides like, say, Callisto, Lumax, or Acuron that goes out on a lot of acres. You look at the label, and it's about a 45-day plant-back restriction to use, which really isn't that big of a deal because most of these herbicides are used pretty early in the season. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, on the Acuron label, they say you can't plant any food or feed crop except corn immediately after application, or wheat 4 months after application, soybean, cotton, sorghum for 10 months after application. That 45-day was a grazing restriction on Acuron. But it gets a little dicey when we start talking about more of our popular herbicides like atrazine, right? Atrazine's used on some of our forage crops anyway if we were going to graze corn. There's a 60-day restriction if you use atrazine as a pre-emerge herbicide, or there's a 45-day restriction when used as a post-emerge herbicide on corn or sorghum. That you can't turn out cattle onto that stubble. And usually that's not an issue, right? Because, again, those herbicides are applied pretty early in the season. Now, the other issue that comes into atrazine is whether or not you're allowed to plant anything after that herbicide has been applied. And according to the label, you cannot plant any crop within that calendar year. And that is including wheat, which a lot of producers don't really think about. But some of that is due to crop injury that could be experienced with wheat. So that would also apply to a cover crop, though, as well. So you're not legally allowed to plant anything after atrazine in that particular calendar year until the following year. There are some exceptions. There are some supplemental labels out there. One in particular for Oklahoma does allow, in a continuous wheat rotation, they do allow some atrazine to be applied. So it is really, I think that is what the take-home message is going to be, is that these producers really need to kind of scour that herbicide label and figure out what legally they're allowed to do and what's not allowed according to the label.
So, Jaymelynn, in the cases where there may be, say, a 30 or 45-day waiting interval stated on the label, if there's any doubt in the producer's mind, planting that cover crop a little on the later side might give them some reassurance here, might it not?
Yes, sir, it can, and can't stress it enough. to follow label directions and go ahead, and that's what they're there for, and that's what's been tested by the company. So please read your label instructions. Mm-hmm. It never hurts to be a little safer if you wanted to wait a little longer, but do be cognizant, especially for some of these fall forages. If you wait too late, you might not have as much biomass production due to temperature and daylight.
I think what will help producers down the road as cover crops become more popular is that these chemical companies are starting to put some more detailed information into their label about how to use their product with the plan of following up with a cover crop. For instance, some of the labels already out there now do specifically talk about cover crops. One in particular is Corvus. That's a pretty popular corn herbicide. And they say in there that you're not supposed to plant any cover crop after 90 to 120 days of use. But after that period of time has elapsed since application, you're free and clear to plant a cover crop. However, they do say you're not allowed to graze that any for hay or for forage for at least 18 months. And so as we try to fumble through some of these labels to try and figure out what we are allowed and not allowed to do, I think in the future it's going to be a little bit easier for producers to kind of go straight to a particular footnote on a label that does talk about how to handle cover crops following application.
And we appreciate both of you, Doug and Jaymelynn, bringing this to our attention. It's an important matter for producers who are entertaining the idea of cover crop establishment for grazing this fall. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Eric.
Along with us, Jaymelynn Farney and Doug Shoup. Jaymelynn is a beef systems specialist. Doug is a crops and soils specialist, both based in southeast Kansas for K-State Research and Extension. You're listening to Agriculture Today. We'll return in a moment on the K-State Radio Network.
Agriculture and food systems are the main drivers of the Kansas economy, but must be improved in order to feed the world's growing population. How are we going to do so? Reduce food loss, find ways to preserve grasslands, and help families stretch their dollars. Global food systems is one of the 5 grand challenges K-State Research and Extension is addressing. To learn more, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
Welcome back. You're tuned to Agriculture Today. Very soon now, the USDA will be finalizing the payments on the price support programs for 2016 grain production. And in advance of that, K-State Research and Extension and our guest have just posted their final estimates on corn, grain sorghum, soybeans, and wheat payments under the ARC program. And this is for virtually all the counties in the country, including, of course, those in Kansas. Art Barnaby is with us once again, Risk Management Specialist, K-State Research and Extension. And you go to great lengths to put these estimates together, Art, and you might explain the process you go through.
Well, real quick, what we do is once they post the NASS county yields, which come out about March of next year for talking about, well, the crop you harvested last summer. Everything's
right.
A year behind.
Right.
Will be next March, and that's when we'll start the cycle all over again. And then for the other crops like corn, soybeans, and sorghum, what I'm using is the county yields and wheat too when there is no NASS yield. In that case, those numbers did not come out until July, roughly. Turned out to be a huge data file, one bigger than that on any computer I had would operate. We finally put it on the server to break it apart. So it took us a lot longer to get the number out than I had anticipated, and we're later than I expected. The second thing that has come in on these yield things is there's quite a bit of difference in some cases between the NASS yield and the RMA yield. In counties that have both numbers, I use the NASS yield to calculate the estimated payment, but I gave you the yields that came from crop insurance too. So you have all the information we have on these counties. And you can see readily if there is any difference between the NASS yield and the RMA yield.
Art, the mechanics of the estimates and how producers can access the number for their county. You've handy interactive maps online at agmanager.info. What will producers find when they go to that site and check this out?
Well, first of all, you can kind of see whether you got payments and the surrounding counties didn't, or vice versa. And the ones who didn't get payments are writing me cards and letters now. But the reality is, you'll see that real quickly. What you need to do is put your cursor over the top of your county, and a pop-up window will come up and give you a whole lot more information. In particular, you'll be able to interpret how likely you are to collect that estimated payment. For example, if the example I used in the case problem was a irrigated yield, according to RMA, was 73 bushels. The non-irrigated wheat yield was 52 bushels. Now, they only publish two numbers, RMA does, which is the irrigated and the non-irrigated number. In counties that don't have at least 25% of the acres irrigated, FSA will combine all yields into a single number. The combined yield is combined irrigated, non-irrigated. So since nobody puts that number out, KSU had to estimate that. And the way I went about estimating that, if I get it right, I did it. If I didn't, KSU did it. But the way I went about doing that is I calculated the percent of the acres that were insured and then did a weighted average of the non-irrigated and irrigated yields that were produced by RMA to come up with a weighted average, if you will, which is my estimate of what the combined yield would be for payment purposes. And so I started with 73 irrigated, 52 non-irrigated, and I came up with a 55.8 bushel combined yield for this county. Now, that will show up. All those numbers will show up in that pop-up window. The way you interpret that, however, is we give you the break-even numbers too. So it'd take about 4 bushels more than 55. And that payment that I was estimating at $13, that was not the maximum, by the way, but that $13 payment goes away. None. On the other hand, let's say it's rather than 55 bushels, let's say it's down around 48. Well, all of a sudden, you got the maximum check. So it only has to move 4 or 5 bushels.
Range is pretty tight, isn't it?
It is real tight. If your yield is right at the money, then it only has to move a little bit. Now, for the people that, let's say in the same county, let's say that number hadn't come in at these levels. Let's just say that the combined yield, rather than 55 bushels, came in at 40. Well, at 40 bushels, you're so deep in the money that you can take that check to the bank. You're going to get paid the maximum if that's the case. So if it's really deep in the money, you're going to get paid. On the other hand, let's suppose rather than 55 bushels, that came in at 68 bushels. Well, in that case, there's no chance you're getting a payment. So you can certainly get ranges around how likely you are to get payments if you're either deep in the money or far out of the money. It's the ones that are right at the money where the yield that you have, we estimated, is right at the trigger point. Then it could go either way.
And producers, we're urging you to check out the website and take a look at the trends in your county. As you look across the commodities, though, Art, is there a general drift of whether or not there will be a payment for each? Corn, grain, sorghum, soybeans, wheat. What's the broad expectation?
You know, when you look across all the counties, they're kind of all over the place. There's counties going to get full payments and counties not going to get anything. So as a general statement, should I have taken ARC or PLC?
And you're getting hit with that.
Oh, sure, I'm getting asked that question, yeah. And had it gone the other way, the PLC enrolled farmers would be sending me the same emails, but different address. The bottom line is that in that first year, we knew going in you're going to get a wheat payment. We knew going in you weren't going to get a sorghum payment under PLC. We knew you're going to get a wheat payment under ARC. Those are the two things we knew going in. The reason we knew that on sorghum, probably everyone's forgot by now, but at that time, sorghum prices were $1 over corn, and that was the Chinese effect. And, you know, I don't think anybody realistically thought that the basis was going to remain $1 over corn, putting sorghum way out of the money on a PLC payment. So the only thing that would have paid that first year would have been under the ARC program, if even then, okay? So what we concluded at the end of our exercise, which still looks like it's pretty well holding out, we saw sorghum was the most likely to collect from PLC. No guarantees. and that soybeans was very unlikely to collect from PLC. So that tells you that you probably would pick ARC for your soybeans and maybe go with PLC on your sorghum, although that was kind of tough to do because you knew going in you weren't going to get a payment the first year. Mm-hmm. So you're betting on the back four at that point, and it was all price forecast, right, wrong, or indifferent. That left corn and wheat as the crops that could go either way. Absolutely. K-State did not forecast a record crop in 2016. Mm-hmm. We hit 57 bushels statewide average. First time we've ever cleared 50 bushels. We are so piled up with wheat, we still got wheat. And it's going to take a while before the market works all of this out. There was nobody here that was forecasting wheat prices hitting the loan rate. And those who say they were forecasting that are liars. It just wasn't in the cards at that time. So people were making decisions based on how things looked then. And, of course, at that time, what if it had gone the other way rather than the 16 being a bumper crop? What if it had failed? Well, if it had failed, would look great. Yeah, ARC would look a lot better than PLC had it failed. And that could have happened too. So, the problem with these programs, or at least from a farmer's perspective, is, you're betting on the forecast of yields and you're betting on the forecast of prices, and it can go either way. And that is probably why a lot of farmers don't really like the choice. They'd rather just USDA put a program out and they'd be one program. Having said that, I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. And the reason I don't think it's going to happen is because you have to remember, first of all, one of the reasons that people didn't get paid, and we did cover this, but I don't think 10% of my audience understood what I was telling them. If you had crop bust in your previous 5 years' history in 2 or more of the years, then at least one of those bad yields is going to end up in your 3-year average, and it would set a very low guarantee in your county to the point that you'd only need an average crop to make the guarantee. Well, the reverse is true, too. There were counties that had bumper crops in the previous 5 years, and they got some really nice payments out of ARC. There's some places up in Iowa, $90 an acre. Now, those folks are going to want to keep ARC. Mm-hmm. So I don't think ARC's going anywhere. At the same time, I've got a county in southern Iowa that I'm tracking. Doesn't look like they're going to collect anything out of the corn ARC program, period. We don't know that for a fact yet because we've still got 2 more years here to go, but as time's running out for them to collect anything, they haven't collected so far. So when you've got that kind of environment, guess what? I think Congress will do what they did before. We're going to have a PLC program, we're going to have an ARC program, and farmers will get to choose which one they want to enter. And my prediction is they will do based on what the previous experience was, which, if you think about it, could work out exactly the opposite. In other words, over the next 5 years, rather than getting the bumper crop, we get the crop failure. Right. And then I'm upset that I'm in PLC.
For the here and now, be sure to take full advantage of the estimates that Art and his team have put together on the final corn, grain sorghum, soybean, and wheat ARC payments for 2016 production, due out here in just a few weeks now, but have a look at the likelihood of those payments materializing in your county at the interactive tool found on agmanager.info. Art, as always, thank you. He's a risk management specialist with K-State Research and Extension, is Art Barnaby, and we'll return. After these moments away, you're listening to Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services.
Welcome to Agriculture Today. I'm Sarah Moyer, and across the way we have Extension Beef Specialist Dale Blasi to highlight this year's Beef Stalker Field Day, an exciting annual event, and this year's scheduled for September 21st. Dale, what is the need-to-know information that folks should be keeping in mind as this event is approaching?
Well, Sarah, this is the 18th occurrence for the Beef Stalker Field Day this year. It's going to be held on the 21st, Thursday, of September. We're going to bring up this year Dr. Darrell Peel from Oklahoma State University. For several years, we've used Dr. Glenn Tonser, and he does an amazing job for us. But I thought it'd be really good for the attendees to get a little different spin on the cattle market outlook from one of his peers from Oklahoma State. We're also going to talk a fair bit during the day about cover crops. There's been a fair bit of interest, if you will, in the utility and the use of cover crops, and we've assembled a very, very good group of producers across the spectrum that can discuss how they're used and how they can help in operation. In the afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about grazing management. We have Dr. Keith Harmony coming up from Hays, Kansas, to talk about some different intensive stocking strategies to help optimize on the marketplace. And the other thing we're going to talk about really is a series of breakouts. And I've assembled a really good group of peers here at KSU that are going to talk about proper dosing procedures. There's some new technology we're going to share. Dr. Greg Hanslachek is going to talk about sometimes why vaccines fail to respond, at least to our perceptions. We're going to have a fair bit of work looking at valuation of stocker and backgrounding budgets by Robin Reed out of the Department of Ag Economics, and some more discussion, if you will, about cover crops and how to decide which cover crops to use. And to follow that is Drs. Jaymelynn Farney and Doug Shoup from the Southeast Extension Center are going to talk about some good take-home information for the attendees.
A full program, nonetheless, here at this upcoming K-State Beef Stalker Field Day, and this is an annual event, and as you said, it's been around a while, but the program continues to change and be altered each year to give a different perspective for those in attendance. Aside from the program changing, what other reasons should producers be coming to this event?
The one thing I hear from producers, and we do everything we can to facilitate the information transfer, is the opportunities we allow throughout the day for producers to visit with their peers. It may not be so much what is being discussed by the speakers, and there's certainly really good take-home information, but it's also the exchange of ideas and information amongst the producers. And as I said, we facilitate that opportunity for folks that may not see each other but once or twice a year. So it's really a good come-together opportunity for producers that are like-minded in the procurement and development and growing of backgrounded and certainly stocker cattle.
Details for the event. It does take place in Manhattan here at the university's Beef Stalker unit. So if producers haven't been able to see that unit in the past, they can come up and see that as well, again, on September 21st. And the pre-registration, what information do they need to know about that?
Well, pre-registration deadline, of course, we need that information for planning our meals, but the deadline is September 15th, so $25 per participant. Pre-registration at the door is $35. Visit ksubeef.org. Again, www.ksubeef.org for additional information, location. We're just a short 5 miles north and west of Manhattan, out in the beautiful Flint Hills. There's a fair bit of change that's occurred out at the stocker unit. We're actually doing a bit of expansion. We're actually delving this year into some silage management and silage feeding. So we've developed a pad, and certainly people that have visited in the past, there'll be some new things for them to see, and there's a good opportunity for them as well to visit their facility.
And if producers can get their hands on a flyer for this event, there's a map there that helps direct them to that beef stalker unit. After the program, there's a subsequent program that's being hosted by the Kansas beef industry and through the Department of Animal Sciences. What should people be watching out there for after this Beef Stalker Field Day?
Well, as I indicated earlier, I try to do everything I can to encourage producers to visit amongst themselves, and we always hold a complimentary, what we call a Cutting Bull's Lament, and basically we'll be providing prairie oysters and coho ice cream. And as an added treat this year, Jeff Davidson, actually one of KSU's watershed specialists from the Flint Hills, is quite the musician, and we've been able to get Jeff convinced to share his talents with the attendees. So again, it's a nice wrap up to a day full of education, an opportunity to folks to get a little bit to eat before they hit the road and head back to their homes.
So come out for the Beef Stalker Field Day and stick around for some entertainment there at the end of the day and an opportunity to talk to other producers. Thank you, Dale, for coming on and sharing with us about the 2017 K-State Beef Stalker Field Day.
Thank you, Sarah.
That was K-State Beef Extension Specialist Dale Blasi. He is also the coordinator for this exciting event. Producers who regularly attend the Beef Stalker Field Day have probably met Dale themselves. Once again, the registration information for this event is online at ksubeef.org, and I don't think producers will want to miss this. In other livestock news, the Kansas Junior Livestock Show will celebrate its 85th year later this month in Hutchinson. Todd Domer says the largest number of exhibitors in more than 20 years has entered the show.
The statewide event, scheduled for September 29th through October 1st, will feature 812 youth from 95 counties who have entered 2,033 animals. The livestock total includes 130 market steers, 334 breeding heifers, 262 market hogs, 275 breeding gilts, 325 market lambs, 316 breeding ewes, 220 meat goats, and 171 commercial doe kids. Douglas County leads the state with the most exhibitors at 34 and the largest number of total livestock entries with 97. Separate from the selection of species champions, a showmanship contest will be held. The top showman in both junior and senior divisions for each species will receive a silver belt buckle. Prizes will be awarded for 2nd through 5th place in each division. In addition, the show will present scholarships to students who have excelled academically, in community service, and in 4-H FFA. This is the 25th year for the scholarship program, which has awarded a total of $411,000 to 306 exhibitors since 1993. Major sponsors of the Junior Livestock Show are the Kansas Livestock Association, Kansas State University, and the Agribusiness Council of Wichita. I'm Todd Domer.
Thanks, Todd. I'm Sarah Moyer, and you're listening to Agriculture Today.
Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen. This is our state, Kansas.
September 22nd, autumn starts.
That's Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University with comment on life in rural Kansas.
A few days ago, the mailman brought a postcard from friends in the Netherlands. It was a greeting and a reminder that for the last few years we had rented their cottage while staying over there. While there, we used a car from other friends, and for the 6 weeks we felt at home, visiting and welcoming friends and family to our own place. Flying away and crossing the pond this time of the year always gave me one regret. I would not experience the full season here in Kansas, the cooling off after a hot summer. But this year is different. There are other plans. Hence the postcard with the 5 very familiar scenes and written on the back, best of wishes and good luck. The good luck we can surely use, as well as the good wishes, written in Dutch. In a good week, September 22nd, autumn starts, but as I look around, there are already plenty of indicators. Because we have missed the autumn here for the last 5 or 6 years, I plan to enjoy this one. And with a little bit of luck, we will. There is business to attend to and an October wedding of a grandson. The other day his mother and I quickly cut some small trees up into small blocks to use as table decorations with lights placed in them. The bark will be interesting. We selected golden rain tree, hackberry, and walnut. Those were trees which would have been cut down and thinned out during fall cleanup. So there was no regret cutting trees down. Anyway, who would not gladly cut a tree down for a grandson's wedding? With the cooler nights and shorter days, you can sense that fall is coming. The leaves of some trees are yellowing, and some are floating down to the ground. I've picked up some beautiful yellow leaves. I've even seen some reddening in the top of young maple trees. And the rough-leaved dogwood on my hill is turning a purplish color, while the white berries show their color, creamy white. Other berries and fruits are ripening and turning color too. There is the red, juicy berry of the honeysuckle. And growing up alongside a group of trees grows gorgeous bittersweet with its fat orange berries. It will be great table decoration. The Osage orange apples are dropping, but only from the female trees. Now you can see which tree is male, no fruit. The small asters are blooming alongside of the walking trail, and the grasses have shot up tall. The big blue stem shows its turkeyfoot, and Indian grass its plumes. As you walk the trail early in the morning, one has to dodge the freshly spun spider webs. They're neat to look at, and you can gently touch one end, and a spider will climb to that spot to investigate. The big bur oak I planted as an acorn is dropping acorns as the squirrels are collecting their share of the crop. I've already picked up quite a handful, and I'm planning to sow them after I pull the tomatoes out. That soil is well prepared and mulched. I plant them in a row, all little bur oaks. The big oak now has a circumference at chest height of 52 inches. That's not bad for a slow-growing tree. Of course, it took nearly half my life to grow that big, 40+ years. Applying the formula to establish the value of that tree, you do the following. Measure the circumference at breast height. It's 52 inches, like I said, divided by 3.14. That makes 16.56. Take the dollar value per square inch as set by the Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers, and I'm using $35. Look up species, class for the bur oak, which is 100. Examine the tree for condition class, which is excellent, and hence another 100. Then decide location class. If it is a specimen or historical tree, the percent value is another 100. Going all the way down to 20%. I take 100 because of where I planted the tree. Apply this figure to the formula, and I calculate the value of the tree I planted as an acorn, now functioning in the landscape, at $7,490. Remember, this is a young bur oak. I've represented 100-year-old bur oaks, which had a landscape value of several $10,000s of dollars. Trees have value in the landscape. But back to the fall season. In the country, the goldenrods are blooming, and sorghum is coloring, as are the beans. Not ready to harvest yet, but they are starting to show color. And so is the rangeland. It is slowly turning a gray-green, but no longer the fresh green. The sumacs are getting red. All that with the big fat moon of a few nights ago. It's going to be another autumn, and we will celebrate it here. The bedroom windows will be wide open as the cool air flows in. I hope to hear skeins of geese flying over going south. And I want to hear the owl call to its mate. Then during the day, with the cooler temperatures, there's the easy time to clean up the yard, mow one more time, and that will be it. Then there will be the evening to light that first fire in the open fireplace. Fall is here, and winter is coming. But for now, enjoy the colors.
Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on rural Kansas. That's our time for today. As always, thanks for tuning in. And for Sarah Moyer, Eric Atkinson here, this has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.